Okay.
First of all, there was a report developed by Jerry Cook, who was a statistician, who brought in very compelling information that the university was using the race to the detriment of his son at the University of San Diego Law School, or medical school. I also had the matrix of Berkeley, which I mentioned to you earlier, which classified students on the basis of these factors, race and ethnic background, and awarded extra points on the basis of that. 250 if you were Latino, a larger number if you were Chicano, and an even larger number if you were black.
Did you ever ask anybody why it was that these points were being assigned?
I did, and the response was that that was the only way that we could get diversity given the academic achievement gap between underrepresented minorities and Asians and whites, and especially Asians.
Okay, and what did they describe the academic achievement gap as being?
Standardized test scores.
And just standardized test scores?
Largely standardized test.
And you didn't ascribe a lot of value to those test scores, did you?
Well, I attribute some value to them. I think that there's an overemphasis on those test scores.
And you knew that there was a test score gap between black and Latino students and white students in 1995. Did you not?
Sure, I did.
And so the question was, why did that test score gap, why did it exist? And why do you think that test score gap, in 1995 when you were deciding what to do, why did you think that test score gap existed?
First of all, I had no firm knowledge of the extent to which it was being used by the university.
Separate from...
But separate and apart from that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why there is that gap between underrepresented minority students on the one hand and Asian and white on the other.
But you
know, a lot of theories about that, but I don't know.
Okay, and but you know that the gap exists.
It sure does.
And you know that the reason for the gap is not biological. It's not.
That's right. It is not.
Right. And that means that at least to some part, the reason for that gap has to be social, correct?
To some extent. Probably a very large extent.
Okay. And you would say one of those factors, would you agree that one of those factors would be the quality of the K through 12 education you received?
Yes.
And you would say that another one of those factors could be the income level of your family.
Yes.
And you would say another one of those factors might be access to test prep courses that you had been able to take.
Absolutely.
And you would say another one of those factors might be the character of the questions asked on the test.
Yes, it's test.
Did you ever call for the elimination of the use of standardized tests in admissions?
No, I felt that would be inappropriate for a regent to do. We have a system of what is called shared governance at the University of California, and there are certain areas that regents do not tread into.
But you treaded into how they made admissions decisions, did you not?
I not only I jumped in with both feet into the question of whether the university should be using race as a factor, because that's an overarching policy question.
But the use of a standardized test is an overreaching policy question too, is it not?
No, I think that is something that the faculty has a better handle on, whether this method or that method is a better approach to admission. They're the ones who are supposed to be doing the due diligence to determine the validity of the standardized test.
Okay, and did you ever say to yourself, maybe those points that are being given to Black and Latino and Native American students are a way to compensate for the bias that exists in standardized tests? Did you ever think that?
No, because I would
I'm sorry, you just objected.
I would have to conclude that there was a bias, and the people that we have hired to make judgments about that were telling us that there was no bias.
Okay, here's what I'm asking. You have Black, Latino, and Native American students,
okay,
who you would agree, in the aggregate, score lower on standardized tests
right,
than white or Asian students.
Right.
And so using standardized tests to make admissions decisions would, if uncorrected, discriminate or at least bias, let's say first, discriminate against Black, Latino, and Native American students.
No, I won't, no.
Would you say that
they will perform differently if that standardized test is used, but it does not mean, since you and I have agreed that it's not genetic, that they can achieve on the standardized test just like whites and Asians can.
But we know they don't. We know that doesn't happen. That's what I'm saying. No. But if you found that in terms of access and availability and opportunity to take test prep courses, that Native American, Black, and Latino students had, in the aggregate, less opportunity to do that than white students in the aggregate, you would say that white students had an advantage over and against Black, Latino, and Native American students. Would you not?
Given the ground rules that you've established, I will say yes.
Okay.
Given the ground rules that you've established.
If you were to discover that Black students of every socioeconomic category, from the richest to the poorest, score lower on the SAT than poor white students, you would say white students have an advantage over and against all Black, Native American, and Latino students if the test is used in the admissions process, would you not?
Whatever happened to this dialogue approach that you and I were going to have at the outset?
We're
because
still
you're
still having it.
You're framing your questions in such a way that to be logical and to be consistent, I have to respond to your questions yes or no, and that's not capturing the nuances of a lot of these issues.
And I'm only trying to, this is definitely a yes or no question. Okay. And so do you need me to repeat it? Or Yeah. So if you learned, and if it were true, let's say if it were true.
If it were true.
That the test scores of Black students in every socioeconomic category, from the richest to the poorest, were lower than the test scores of poor white students, of lower income white students, then you would say, and middle income white students and rich income white students, then you would say that white students had an advantage over and against Black, Latino, and Native American students if the tests are used in determining admissions decisions.
Yes, that logically follows.
On page 20, you yourself responded, and now I'm just going to read out loud from the